Hello, everybody. Welcome to the G Show. This is a host, Shiva with you. And today we are joined by Philippe Gerwill, a very famous person, I would say, and a very inspiring one. I wanted to introduce you to him, but I wanted to give his credentials first. So, he's a digital healthcare humanist and futurist, and healthcare metaverse and AI pioneer, thought-provoking international speaker as well, and he worked as in medical board advisory as well. Now, I want you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. And you say the most essential stuff, but actually I worked 30 years in the industry, mainly in, let's say, half of it in specialty chemicals and half of it in pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical. I'm on early retirement, luckily, since September 2022. But I started already before, to spend a lot of my time, even holidays, starting to do some keynote speech, advisory role, and all that. And now I can do that full time, and for me, again, I think what is most important is for me really giving back to the community. I think I will do as much as I can to help, younger generation like you. They are so amazing talents out there, and I really enjoy helping them.
That's amazing. Like I literally, as much I read about you, and now I'm actually meeting you person is actually an honor for me. Now I want to start with my first question. It is, how do you see the role of digitalization, humanism, and the future of healthcare?
So I think, you touched a very sensitive point, and that's also why I call myself, a digitalization humanist, because, I'm a big fan of all those technology, and, being, IoT, AI, metaverse, 5G, where, you name it, you have it. But I want those technology to serve the human and not the other way around. And that there's a very thin line, and I think we have to be careful about that. So there is no secret recipe for that, but I really think is about, again, embracing those technologies, but always with the human in mind, And in my example, for the moment, I'm doing a lot, around healthcare, the metaverse and all that. But the key point for me is to keep, as well the HCPs, the doctor, the nurses, which are actually, I would say, in a very bad situation. They are overloaded, overclocked. We don't have enough. And it's just slightly different from one country to the other, but it's a worldwide issue. But on the other side, also the patients, So always keep those people in mind and use the technology basically to support them. I'm still a big fan, of AI, but I still prefer today, I'm not saying it's not going to change, but today to call it augmented intelligence and not artificial intelligence. It is a tool to help us, to be more efficient and maybe to release some of the non-added value time.
AI is definitely augmented intelligence. I had this quote somewhere like from Tanmay. He mentioned his keynote as well. And the condition of doctors and nurses, we already saw in COVID-19 and the pressure that they had. So I believe so. Now, this brings me to my next question, which I am really curious to ask from you. It's about, what are the biggest opportunity for using technology to improve healthcare in developing countries like us? Like I'm from India, and which is a developing country. So what are your take on that?
I think, first of all, before going to those details, I still would like to mention something. We are unfortunately entertaining a kind of fight between AI and the doctors. Rather to see that as a tool and augmented intelligence, as I said before, we say, AI is better, doctor is better, and all that, and that's not helping. It's a tool for them to release some of their time to do what humans do better. Most of the people go to the doctor also to talk to a human, not to talk to a machine. So whatever we can remove is to release the time for the doctors. And today, I would even ask the question, is the technology going to make us more human or less human? And I'm sorry to say that it sounds easy to answer, but today the average GP visit in the UK is 10 minutes. In Germany, it's 7 minutes. And all the other countries, it's a question of a few more minutes or not. And out of these 10 minutes in the UK, only 30% is spent with the patient. So I say today the doctors are the robot. The doctors are the machine today. And if we cannot release the 70% that they are not spending with the patient, I think that's the objective. Remove that, with the help of technology, and then they will have more human time. So that's just the introduction before. So now come really to your points about, developing countries and all that. So I still think it's about accessibility. Technology can help us to get access to the healthcare, to the knowledge and whatever when you are in remote places. Traveling in India is not only a question of distance. Sometimes it's just a question of time. If you're in a big city, and I think you are from New Delhi, it's not about the distance, it's about the time that you spend on the street. So if you can remove that time, thanks to technology, because you can connect, to hospitals, to doctor or patient, community, whatever, without having to go out physically and driving, I think that's already a big step and accessibility. But that again, I would move to the next point also in terms of education, because that's the other point, when you say developed countries and whatever, and I don't even want to call India a development country, because I think you are far ahead in many other areas, but I really think it's also about education. Quite often the patient don't know that they are sick or that they have something and have to go to the doctors. So it's not only the step about going to the doctor or doing that online rather than physically, is knowing, being informed, being knowledgeable about what you have and what you should do. So it's a really broad scope. Even in healthcare, it's not just about going to the doctor and the hospital. It's also about knowing what you have to do and when you have to do and when you don't have to go.
You literally give me a very thought-provoking answer and time to digest it. I need to think about it a bit more of this topic, because not India, there's Africa and there's more developing countries. Do we think about any technology replacing human? That kind of sounds into. Now I would like to ask.
I could even move on without getting your question, but I'm also involved in Africa. So that's another example, about basically educating doctors in Africa. Usually doctors have to leave their country, go to other countries to get education and all that. But the real target and objective should to get them trained in their own country, because, the equipment might be different. So I can send an African doctor from Kenya, maybe even to Turkey, to keep it not too expensive, but at the end he will be trained on different machine. When he's back in his operating room, he doesn't have the same equipment. So the real target should be to train the people locally. And then, of course, if we can use the technology, to share this information, being then VR glasses, cameras and all that, to basically give access to other people in the same country, to medical students, and that's what we should do with the technology. But trying to keep the people in their country rather than, export them to a completely different environment where they meet other people, other technology, which is not always a good basis for training for them.
That's how it is. Now I wanted to know from the perspective that you gave me, it made me think about long-term implications of, using such kind of technologies, regardless the income of or location, as you mentioned. So what do you think about it? Please give me your view.
So I think, that's surely one of the key challenges, because we have even the risk, we talk quite often about the digital divide, so the digital divide, can be in terms of cost, in terms of country, whatever. So it's really too easy, well, not too easy, but it's unfortunately the reality that people are looking, to earn more money. So they will go to the, to the richer country, to all that, to make money. But I'm a big fan, I still dream about, universal health access. So it's about giving access, to those people who are really in need and don't have access. And I mentioned Africa before. Africa is an example. Not often are we doing pilots in Africa. We do pilots in the US, in a rich country, and then you move to this poorer country, and they cannot afford it. We should do the opposite. We should do pilot in the poorest country, and if we work for the poorest country, it will be easy to export, to richer country. But again, it's always about, making money. Not everybody has really, there's so much need, worldwide. And we already have a challenge with that, let's say an additional big enough challenge with that. Because, each time I do a presentation, I always try to show the latest number in terms of internet penetration. Today, I think we are around like something like 67% internet penetration worldwide. And then you go down to continents, so it's very different. Like I mentioned before, Africa is around 40%. But even in the continent, countries are very different. So we should, while we move on with, nice technology and nice stuff, we should not forget our agenda of bringing more and more people access to internet, because we will increase that gap rather than bringing the other people on board as well.
Right. So now I would like to ask my next question. It's about how can we ensure technology like it is used to improve the patient's experience rather than detract from it. For example, if we talk about USA, they have a much better medical system as compared to many of the developing countries. So do they are really costly as well. But here in the, if we talk about like robots are like used by doctors, like for example, the Vinci is quite expensive. Not every hospital is going to buy it for it. So what are the main challenges you think about it? And while answering this question.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question, because exactly that's the issue. We mentioned AI, you mentioned robots and all that. I just give you an example. Something like AI for radiology is not new. Since 10 years we talk about it and we have proven that it can be better and whatever. But now you go to the hospital and find me the hospital who has implemented the technology. That's the issue, between what you read like a nice case and getting to every single place. That's the challenge, And it is, of course, it is a cost challenge, not only because of the cost of the new equipment, but also about the cost of the old equipment, because people have invested and have not amortized that equipment at that time, so they are not so keen to throw away an old equipment or replace a new one, because who will take, you are already losing the money because you have not amortized that. So it's always a question of money, And then the whole discussion about robots, it's even a cultural issue, So like most of the countries in Asia, and it may be, and India might be somewhere in between from that point of view, But like Japan, China, and all that, these are countries that are aware about the people challenge they have, that generation challenge, that people are becoming older. So they know that they don't have enough workforce to support these people becoming older. So for them, a robot is welcome, because robot will help them to cover part of this gap. In Europe, it's the opposite. We are afraid of robots, because robots may take your job and all these kind of discussions. So there's really a cultural challenge, and it's just a question of time. Because even Europe, we are becoming older, and we don't have enough people to take care of the older people. Then we have another cultural challenge. In your countries, I think it's the same in many Asian countries. Usually the older people, your grandparents, are living with you. In Europe or the US, we put them in elderly homes, So there's still a difference, from a social and cultural point of view, that you take care of your parents and grandparents while we put them in hospitals and elderly home. And then there you don't have enough people, So you would need technology, but in our mindset, those people are not accepting this new technology.
Now, I wanted to know your personal experience actually with technology. Like, how has technology helped you to manage your own health? Or maybe have you ever saw any challenges that you may have faced in using technology in healthcare? Just a personal experience you would like to share.
Yes, so of course I have experienced a lot by myself. And we can talk about both. We can talk about healthcare, and I can give you some nice example, but also AI, I think, is very important, because, the whole topic, about ChatGPT and all other generative AI, I think we should embrace it. The issue is just that we are more tempted to look all what ChatGPT cannot do rather than using what ChatGPT can do. And, for simple things in terms of, email, productivity, whatever, I can gain 80% of my time just with that, rather than looking at the complex things. It's the same discussion about, what digitalization can do and what human can do. Humans should do what they do better, and digitalization where we can release the human piece. So here's the same. Use ChatGPT, start to learn to use it. It's amazing what you can do without going to the complex stuff. The first time I was using ChatGPT was to write a recommendation for a lawyer in Paris. So it's a lawyer I know since quite some time, and we had some interesting discussion about GDPR, data privacy, and all that stuff. And she knows that I'm on a multiple boards, and she's now interested to go, also on some boards. And then she wanted to start, to register for a women on board business school curriculum in France. And she asked me for a recommendation letter. I used ChatGPT. It took me 5 minutes, 1 minute of ChatGPT and 4 minutes to personalize it. So, and that's the point, 80% of the content you can get, and then you add your own touch. And for me, it's a huge gain in productivity every day by using it like that. Now for healthcare, I still have to be careful that I'm lucky because of my network and the conference and everything I do. I have a lot of doctors around me, but these are the savvy doctors. I may have a wrong picture, a biased picture, because, you have the guy who is sitting in his office, in his practice, and having one customer after the other, and never can go out to do any upskilling or new knowledge, So I still think the genius I have around me are not the majority, these are the exceptions. So I think that's the challenge. So in terms of healthcare, it's still about, to the digitalization, to access worldwide knowledge. You might go to your doctor next. It's nothing wrong about him, but next door, even in a big city like New Delhi, but he might not know what's happening in the US, what's happening in Dubai, what's happening in Asia. So to this technology, you can access to all this data. But again, today it's barely not possible because they don't have the time to do that. We have to release time of those HCPs so that they can do that.
Well, that actually supports a statement. One of the very renowned doctor of India, Dr. Devi Shetty, he said about he see patients like around 1,000 patients a day and many more like that. And he said using technology and their medical data and ECG stuff, he can see the data of the people living the Caribbean island in USA and while traveling in flight and stuff like that. So he was embracing and even saying that the new surgeon or the new doctor should learn how to use technology instead of fearing from it, that they cannot work with it. So that's what the point mentions.
Yeah, and again, it's also about education, So I'm a close friend of Professor Shafi Ahmed. I don't know if you know Professor Shafi Ahmed. So Shafi is the most watched surgeon in the world, So Shafi did one time he streamed a session with 55,000 students in more than 140 countries. So just imagine what that means, This represents years of classroom training, in one shot. And I think that's why we should embrace that, because not only you get this kind of, thousands of people that you can touch, but you touch them, with expert knowledge, with one of the best guys in the world.
Now, my final question is about your hopes and, fears for the future of technology in healthcare industry.
So the hope, of course, is to get, as I mentioned before, universal health access, getting more and more people getting access that have no access today. It's not just about improving our access. It's really, we have people that have no access at all. So it's really getting more people access that cannot go to the way physically. The fear, I think the fear is the same as today. Of course, it can be misused, and the only thing I say is, I give you an example. I think today we are not hard enough and tough enough on the people that are misusing, technology or data. And the example is really, for example, data privacy, your health data. Usually a patient is open to share his data if there is a benefit for him. If he get a better treatment, if he get cured because he's sharing the data, he's open to share the data. And most of the people that tell you not to share health data are usually people that are not sick. Because if you are desperate and whatever, you will share the data. But the key issue is not that. The key issue is that we are not tough and not strong enough to punish the people that are misusing the data. So because we are not tough enough on that, we are punishing the people that could benefit from sharing data. So I think that's one of my key challenges. People, I'm open to share data if I get a better outcome, being health data or any other data. But I'm also aware that people might misuse it. And we are not strong enough with those people. So that's one of my biggest issues, because we have more and more data. The volume of data is increasing, talking big data and all that. So we have more and more data. Things are going quicker. The pace of those changes is amazing. And if we go so quick without fixing, like I would say, kind of legacy issue, I think the danger could be quite big.
It may be a very challenging issue for the politicians as well, if they want to work on that. Now, I wanted to know any closing message you have for our audience, because we reached the end of our stream.
So I think the key point is, as I said, usually I talk a lot, about healthcare metaverse, but also about AI. And the thing is, today, tools like ChatGPT are technologically good, but for healthcare, they are missing the content. So if you can get the content, the professional content really from, unfortunately, you need it from doctors. But I have an example, my friend, Dr. Zaid Khan in Dubai, he created a metaverse doctor for women, for women health. And what he did, because he's a world-class gynecologist and obstetrician, he loaded more than 280,000 research papers about women's health, 40 or 80,000 of algorithms, So now ChatGPT has the content to women's health and has more content than even a gynecologist might have. So I think that's the point, for things like AI or metaverse in healthcare. You still need the professional validated content. But if you have that, I'm sorry to say that this metaverse doctor probably knows more than many gynecologists all over the world.
That's so true. Thank you so much for your time. And it was an honor once again to have you on the show. And I'm amazed by your knowledge. And I myself got to learn a lot from you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And